easy. Dito to Dubai, at the Dubai na ang walang lawan. Then, pero, the way goes on tikray, puro, agaga, pininin ko sa mata.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyla Garrido, and I am the first reporter for the Group 2. So my topic is about the history of field practice and psychology. So psychology, of course, it traces its roots back to the two philosophers, Aristotle and Plato, who had a differing philosophical views regarding how the mind and body works. So that evolved into a science of behavior, which under Wilhelm Wundt, who established yung pinakauna or the first psychology lab or clinic in 1879. So there are early schools and approaches doon such as structuralism, functionalism, behaviorism, gestalt psychology, and psychoanalysis, which actually nag-shape ng early psychological thought. So the creation of or establishment of the APA or the American Psychological Association in 1892, it actually began as a philosophical society, but soon it shifted towards more on experimental and applied science. So yung psychology, the interest is still the measurement and testing in the late 1800s. So yun yung parang nag-laid ng groundwork for practical application. So as psychology, as it took a more scientific and applied direction, it opened mga opportunities para sa mga professionals na mag-move beyond theory and experimentation toward real world or real life na application ng kanilang mga theories. So it marked ng beginning ng practical psychology and nag-emerge yung clinical practice. So among them, one of the pioneers also is Leitner Whitmer, who established his first psychological clinic at the University of Pennsylvania in 1896, which also he coined the term the clinical psychology. So his clinic, doon nag-focus siya mag-help ng mga children na may learning and behavioral difficulties. Ayan. So mga early training programs and internships, for example, is yung sa Violent Training School and Chicago Juvenile Psychopathic Institute. It emphasized assessment and education remediation. So there are debates about sa qualifications and ethics ng mga psychologists, which are ng mga practitioners, which led the formation of American Association Clinical Psychology or AACP noong 1917, which also later became the section of clinical psychology as APA's first division. So there are efforts na ma-certify ang mga clinical psychologists, pero it failed. So it led naman sa another creation ng isang independent professional organizations like the American Association for Applied Psychology or AAEP during the 1930s. So from those efforts na ma-establish yung psychology, it sought or the field sought para na ma-strengthen sana yung identity ng mga professionals. So it led sa discussions about the mga formal training and credentials na mayroon ang mga psychologists, which nag-gave ng idea para sa isang dedicated na degree or professional degree para sa mga psychologists. So with regards with the first professional degree in 1925, Loyal Crane, they proposed the Doctor of Psychology or PSD. It is a degree which combines psychological training na may elements ng medical education and emphasizing yung mga practical skills such as testing, psychotherapy, and psychopharmacology. So yung mga early practitioners, they focused more on diagnosing and treating emotional and behavioral issues using tests, reconditionings, and psychoanalytic techniques. So yung mga psychologists, they began entering also mga private practice. Although yung role nila is parang limited na lang, they have limited roles compared sa mga psychiatrists. So despite yung parang developments and more opportunities with regards to education and practice, yung mga psychologists, they still faced mga major challenges or mga professional barriers. So, after that, no, they were encouraged na, or it evolved, na mag-focus din sila sa pag-gain ng kanilang legitimacy or independency in mental health treatment and mag-compete din sa mga psychiatrists. So, during the 1940s, no, psychologists, they work primarily actually sa mga psychiatric and state hospitals where yung main duties nila, it involved testing and assessment rather than therapy. So, yung mga psychologists like Wexler and Rappaport, they confirm na, yun nga, yung mga psychologists, they are not yet recognized as therapists kasi dominated yung treatment ng psychiatrists. So, there are, or parang nagkaroon ng tension between two professions nung period na yon. That's why yung mga psychologists, they seek, no, ng legitimacy or independency over sa kanilang services. So, and that led, actually, there is a turning point, which is the World War II, no? It contributed, or psychologists, yung mga psychologists, they contributed with military selection, testing, and treating the battle fatigue. So, APA, they recognized in 1945 and merging with AAAP para ma-include yung mga practice-oriented divisions and accreditation standards. So, yung the Veterans Administrations or VA, it played actually a very important role para magkaroon ng trabaho and matrain yung mga psychologists in psychotherapy. So, it helped, no, they helped na ma-shift yung profession from assessment alone to treatment na. So, yung mga post-war, after the war initiatives, for example, is the National Institute of Mental Health in 1949 and yung initiative ng VA, yung mga training programs nila, it expanded or it gave more opportunities for psychologists para ma-legitimize yung kanilang psychotherapy or ma-legitimize ang psychotherapy as a core part ng kanilang treatment or practice. So, of course, na-establish na yung psychotherapy as a legitimate function ng psychology. Ang next naman na challenge ng mga psychologists ay ma-ensure yung kanilang professional recognition and legal protection. That's why it led to the regulation and licensure. So, after ng war, no, psychologists, they were pushed na magkaroon ng licensure and certification para maprotektahan yung, of course, the public and ma-define yung kanilang mga professional standards. So, it started in Connecticut in 1945 and in Virginia in 1936 and 1946, no, they led the way and by 1976 na marami ng states, no, sa USA ang nagkaroon ng licensing laws or mga certifications, ganun. So, yung mga psychologists, they fought for their independence na makawala against medical control. So, they achieved those major victories or nakuha nila yung independence na yun through Freedom of Choices Act from 1969 to 1974 and court rulings like the Virginia Blue cases, no? Dito sa Virginia Blue cases, they sued actually mga insurance company na nag-refuse to pay yung mga psychologists without unless pala not it is approved by mga psychiatrists kasi noon nga 'di ba dominated ng mga psychiatrists ang mga psychologists. So yun yung parang yung Virginia Blue cases and the Freedom of Choices Acts, it actually affirmed yung autonomy ng psychology. So, yung mga psychologists, they gain recognition under Medicare, Medicaid, and mga hospital practice laws. So, they secure, their own place independently as health providers. So, dahil nga nakasecure na sila ng kanilang professional and legal standing, of course, mayroon din na nagbago sa healthcare system. And yung mga transformation na yun, it actually brought mga new challenges, especially no, sa economic and administrative na sides ng practice. So, there is an healthcare reform and managed care, no? So, by the 1990s, since nga psychology had grown substantially na, a rising healthcare cost naman, there is a rise sa healthcare costs na nag-led din sa pag-rise ng managed care and behavioral health organizations. So, the traditional fee-for-service models nag-decline siya. So, that's why na-force yung mga psychologists na mag-adapt sa mga capitated systems and integrated care, mga cost management. So, actually, many practitioners, they lack actually business training. That's why they were business training, prompting a need for new psychologists in advocacy, negotiation, and efficiency. So that's why the psychologists were encouraged to take active roles in shaping healthcare policies para ma-ensure na yung services na binibigay nila, it will be client or patient-centered rather than a profit-driven, or of course they want to prioritize their patients or their client over money, syempre. Ayun siya. So, by 1996 na, APA had 56,000 licensed psychologists, most identifying as cognitive behaviorists or in the field of psychodynamic. So actually, the profession, they were expanding into health psychology, prescriptive authority, and integrated medical collaboration. So, yung mga psychologists, they were increasingly recognized na bilang mga primary or independent healthcare providers, no? Which also contributed to both mental and physical wellness. So, the field of psychology, it began embracing na yung entrepreneurial and multidisciplinary practices, which also, syempre, nag-emphasize ng kanyang adaptability, innovation, and yung ongoing na advocacy ng mga professional for their autonomy. Yan. So, of course, yung history ng psychology or ng history ng field practice and psychology, it highlights yung resilience, yung ethical commitment, and the continual pursuit para ma-improve ang human well-being through mga science-based care. So, yun po ang brief history about the brief history about field practice ng psychology. Thank you so much po.
What's up, psychmates? Welcome to my channel. Ako nga pala si Althea, ang DJ ng Section B. So, for today's video, we're gonna dive into something na super relatable and very interesting, which is the positive psychology. So, saan nga ba nagsimula ang positive psychology? Quick background muna tayo. So, it was founded by Dr. Martin Seligman noong 1990s. Noong mga panahon na yun, napansin niya na bihira lang daw ang nag-aaral about sa what makes life worth living. Kasi yung mga psychology research noon is puro lang daw about mental illness, like trauma, depression, anxiety. Kaya naisipan niya na paano din kung pag-aralan ko kaya ang human strength and happiness. So, naging movement na yun, instead of just fixing what's broken, positive psychology teaches us to build what is already strong. Or ano na yung mga strength natin. So, ano nga ba talaga ang positive psychology? So, may tatlong main pillars ito. The 3 P's. Remember that, okay? So, positive emotion, like love, hope, joy, gratitude. Next is the positive traits, which is the courage, resilience, and optimism. Lastly, the positive institution. Yung mga organization or communities na nagpapalago ng kabutihan. So basically, it's about flourishing, making the best, most meaningful life. At syempre, hindi lang ito pang theory. Pwede din natin itong i-apply sa totoong buhay. But before we jump sa application, let's explore some of the most famous framework that makes positive psychology more scientific and practical. First is the Seligman PERMA model. PERMA? Signature? No. Ito yung pinaka-famous na model ni Dr. Seligman. PERMA stands for P, positive emotion, E, engagement, R, relationship, M, meaning, and A, accomplishment. Meaning, to truly flourish, kailangan balance lang. Hindi yung masaya ka lang. Dapat may purpose ka rin, may support system, at may mga goals na natutupad. Ang PERMA models is para yung guide into fulfilling life. Hindi lang puro feel good, kundi do good and live meaningfully. Second is the prediction, broaden and build theory. Ayon naman kay Barbara Prediction, positive emotion don't just make us feel good. They help us think better. So kapag mas masaya ka daw, mas nagiging creative ka, mas nagiging open-minded, at mas mabilis ka daw nakakahanap ng solusyon sa problema mo. Positive emotion broaden our perspective and build long-term skills and resilience. Kaya nga sa simpleng laughter or gratitude, may everlasting benefits pala iyon sa utak natin. Third is the Duckworth Grit Theory. Sabi naman ni Angela Duckworth, success isn't just about talent, it's about grit. Meaning and success is equals to passion and perseverance. So, kahit matalino ka, kung hindi ka consistent or determined, nahihirapan ka daw matupad yung mga goals mo. Kaya, kagaya na lang ng achiever, athletes, or honor student, kadalasan hindi lang sila matalino, gritty din sila. Hindi greedy gritty. They stay motivated despite the hardship. And lastly, the KISS mental health continuum. Ito yung ayon kay Kirkis, he proposed that mental health exists on a continuum. Hindi lang healthy or mentally ill. There's something in between daw. Languishing, moderate, and flourishing. So, kahit hindi ka daw depressed, kung hindi ka rin, pwede ka rin hindi flourishing. And that's okay. The goal is to keep or moving toward growth. Ang ganda lang kasi that mental health, it normalizes that mental health ay spectrum. Hindi lang puro black and white.
Fun facts! At may isa pang interesting concept dito. Ito yung the flow state, coined by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Ito yung moment na sobrang engaged ka na sa ginagawa mo na nakakalimutan mo na ang gutom or ang gabi na pala. Para sa mga gamers, artists, or even sa mga estudyante, kapag nagre-review sila, tapos bigla na lang, hala, 2 a.m. na pala, hindi nila napapansin ang oras.
Punta naman tayo sa application in real life. Ginagamit na ngayon ang positive psychology sa school, workplace, at even sa therapy. For example, positive education, teaching gratitude and resilience sa mga estudyante. Next is positive leadership. Sa mga companies, pinapataas na ngayon ang strength ng mga employees. And lastly, mindfulness. Para ito sa stress reduction at emotional balance. Kaya kahit sa simpleng gratitude journaling or act of kindness, scientifically proven na tumataas ang happiness at mental well-being natin.
Another fun facts. Dito naman tayo sa application. Alam nyo ba, noong pandemic, may mga ospital na gumagawa ng gratitude wall kung saan nagsusulat ng thank you notes ang staff to keep spirit high. At isa pa, sa Norway naman, ginagamit ang positive psychology principle sa prisons, focused on rehabilitation and purpose, hindi lang punishment. Amazing, di ba?
Pero syempre, hindi pa rin perfect ang positive psychology. Marami pa rin mga current issue na kailangan nating pag-usapan both international at local context. In global issues, first is the toxic positivity. Ito yung sobrang pag-focus sa pagiging positive na para bang bawal na daw maging malungkot. Pero according to Health 2004, that can actually invalidate real emotions. Kasi daw, minsan kailangan nating maging malungkot para makapag-heal. Second is the cultural bias in research. Most positive psychology research ay Western-based. Kaya kadalasan, hindi ito applicable sa collectivist culture, kagaya natin dito sa Asia. Sabi ni na Christopher at Hickenbottom 2008, ito daw ay masyadong nakafocus sa individual happiness imbis na sa community well-being. And lastly, the post-pandemic burnout and resilience. So after COVID-19, researchers like Waters et al. 2021 found that positive psychology shifted its focus toward resilience and trauma recovery. Many countries are now using positive education to rebuild mental health sa mga bata at workers.
Fun fact muna tayo doon sa topic about sa cultural bias, yung sa global issue. Alam nyo ba na sa Japan, happiness is often about or social harmony, hindi lang personal pleasure. Another is, in South Korea launches national well-being programs for students after the lockdown. That's positive psychology in action.
Punta naman tayo sa Philippine context. First issue is the cultural adaptation. Sabi ni Salinas at Watson 2019, ang Pinoy happiness ay rooted sa kapwa or the shared identity. Ang saya ng isa ay saya ng lahat. Kaya yung bayanihan is the classic example ng community well-being. Second is the mental health and positivity culture. De Guzman et al. Found that kahit optimistic tayo, mataas pa rin ang depression rate kasi kulang tayo sa access to counseling and systematic mental health support. Third is the social media and unrealistic positivity. Reyes called this as curated happiness dahil pressure ang mga kabataan to maging masaya online. Marami ang nagsastruggle silently. Example, during lockdown, marami ang good vibes only post sa TikTok. Pero behind the camera, loneliness at burnout pala. And lastly, the faith and positivity. Siyempre, malaking role pa din ang faith natin. Ang praise na, may awa ang Diyos, often gives hope. Pero nagiging rason din ito para i-suppress ang negative feelings. Kaya kailangan din nating i-balance ang faith-based optimism at emotional honesty.
Fun facts naman tayo doon sa mental health and positivity culture. Alam nyo ba, the Philippines passed the Mental Health Act or RA 11036 in 2018, pero marami pa ring school ang wala pa ring licensed guidance counselor.
So what's next for positive psychology? Experts say the future is inclusive happiness. Mas kailangan daw mag-focus sa community well-being, cultural diversity, and digital wellness. Imagine kung lahat ng school sa Pilipinas ay may subject on gratitude, kindness, and mindfulness, ang ganda siguro ng world natin. So in conclusion, at the end of the day, positive psychology reminds us that happiness isn't luck. It's a skill we can practice and learn. Pero tandaan, it's not about ignoring the pain, but finding meaning and growth despite it. As Dr. Seligman said, the good life is using your strength every day in the main realms of living. Kaya mga ka-psychmate, practice gratitude, spread kindness, and always remember, it's Gwen Shana, not to Gwen Shana, as long as you keep going. So don't forget to like, share, and reflect. Kasi, showing happiness is when we share it. Don't forget to comment. Apokin ni Thea, okay? That's it. Bye-bye!
Good morning, everyone. Today we will discuss about humanistic psychology. I know some of you na alam na
ang humanistic psychology, but our discussion now will be recap na lang or review sa ano man ang natutunan natin about humanistic psychology. So let's start. First, we will talk about the history, origin, and context of humanistic psychology. Humanistic psychology emerged in the mid-20th century as a third force in psychology, reacting against into dominant paradigm of the time. What is this? This is the behaviorism and psychoanalysis. Why? First is, bakit ba na against siya doon sa dalawang dominant? Una, ang behaviorism, which is championed by B.F. Skinner and John Watson, emphasize observable mechanistic black boxes of inputs and output, and thereby de-emphasizing subject experience. We all know that humanistic psychology is focused on subject experience, which is hindi naman gina-focus ng behaviorism, because ang behaviorism kasi is more on pagkakaalam nila is ano yung mga natutunan ng isang tao ay because naobserbahan nila sa ibang tao, which is the vicarious behavior, di ba? Another one is the psychoanalysis founded by Sigmund Freud. This is focus on unconscious drive, early childhood experience, and deterministic process. So it means this is highlighting inner motives, but often within rigid framework of drive and complexes. So humanistic psychologists such as Abraham Maslow, Carl Roger, Rollo May, argued that this approach neglected human wholeness, free will, personal meaning, and potential. So, humanistic psychology developed largely in react against behaviorism and psychoanalysis, emphasizing the importance of values, intentions, and meaning in the compass of individual. Thus, humanistic psychology places human experience, subjectivity, choice, and personal growth at the center of understanding and therapy. So, ginasabi dito na ang humanistic psychology ay isang dominant na nakafocus sa positivity ng isang tao na may free will siya na mag-decide kung ano man ang gusto niya, 'di ba? We have free will. Yun yung gina-point out ng humanistic psychology. Now, let's proceed to the core assumptions and principle of humanistic psychology. So, number one is human being as active agent with free will. People are not merely products of conditioning or unconscious drive. They possess the capacity of choice and self-direction and personal growth. So, sinasabi dito na lahat ng mga tao ay may free will or may choice, may self-direction, marunong mag-decide sa kanilang sarili. So, number two is holistic view of the person. This approach emphasizes understanding the whole person, thoughts, emotion, relationship, meanings, and purpose in life rather than isolated behavior or pathologies. Number three is inherent tendency towards growth and self-actualization. Humans have an innate drive to develop, grow, and fulfill potential, moving towards wholeness and richer experience. Number 4, emphasize on subjective experience, phenomenology, di ba? An individual's perception of reality is central. Subjective experience defines psychological meaning. 5 is focus on meaning, value, self-concept, and authenticity. Key concepts include self-concept, ideal concept, congruence, and authentic living, aligning one's inner experience with one's action. So, makikita natin to sa theory ni Roger. Number 6 is positive view of human nature. Humanistic theories maintain an optimistic view of human potential. So very positive sila in terms sa ano yung potential ng isang tao. Emphasizing creativity, love, and growth rather than pathology. So nakasenter talaga sila sa very subjective ang humanistic psychology. Let's go back to theories of personality. May tatlo akong nalagay dito na theories, which is yung mga theory nila is centered in humanistic psychology. Number 1 dito is si Abraham H. Maslow. Ito siya is leading architect of humanistic psychology. Proposed the hierarchy of needs, of course, ranging from physiological to self-actualization. Introduced the concept of self-actualization, defined as the fulfillment of one's potential and realization of one's best self. Described as peak experience or tinatawag na peak experience, moment of deep meaning, joy, and transcendence, at yung self-actualization. Ito yung sinasabi ni Maslow na if ma-reach mo to, you fulfill have a positive life. Next is Carl R. Roger, develop person-centered therapy, emphasizing conditions of growth, congruence, or genuineness, unconditional positive regard, and empathetic understanding. Advocate for the fully functioning person, open to experience, creative, and living meaning. Focus on self-concept. Si Roger, nakafocus siya sa self-concept and alignment between self and experience. So, very humanistic pa rin, no? Kasi, yung theory ni Carl Roger is nakafocus in self. Next is Rollo May. So, integrated existential ideas with humanism, emphasizing freedom, anxiety, and the search for meaning. Search for meaning in life. Another gilagay ko dito, gi-include ko si Fritz Perls, which is ang co-founder of Gestalt therapy, stressing awareness, wholeness, and here and now experience closely aligned with humanistic philosophy or psychology. Next is the strength and key contribution of humanistic psychology. Number 1 talaga is shifted psychology's focus from pathology to potential, emphasizing growth, agency, and meaning. So, hindi lang sila nakafocus sa pathology, nakafocus sila sa potential ng isang tao. Next naman is promoted understanding of the whole person and the subjective context of human life. So, nakafocus din sila sa subject matter ng isang tao. Inspired influential therapeutic models, especially person-centered therapy, which revolutionize the therapeutic relationship. extend influence to education, organizational development, and positive psychology. So, ito namang humanistic psychology ay nakafocus siya in positive. No? So, yung iba tinawag itong positive psychology. Upheld philosophical and ethical principle of dignity, respect, and autonomy. So yes, ang humanistic psychology is one of dominant ng psychology na very ethical. No? Very ethical siya because nakafocus siya sa potential, self-concept, free will ng isang tao. So, focus din siya sa well-being ng isang individual. Okay, syempre, if my strength ang humanistic psychology, meron naman itong criticism and limitation. Number 1 dito, of course, nakafocus siya masyado in subjective way, lack of empirical rigor, and operationalization. No? So, yung main humanistic concept like self-actualization, peak experience, congruence are difficult to define or test scientifically. Humanistic psychology often relies on qualitative research method, so such as unstructured interviews, personal diaries, which is the field remains short on empirical evidences. Next is overemphasize on positivity, very positive. Si humanistic psychology. Critics suggest it underplays destructive aspect of human nature, aggression, bias, unconscious conflict. Next is cultural bias. It focuses on individual autonomy and self-actualization, reflect Western individualism, which may not generalize to collectivist culture. So, very Western din siya, no? Underemphasize on structural, biological, and social determinant. The model part, kasi yung model, nakafocus lang siya sa free will and choice but may neglect socio-economic and biological constraints on behavior. Last is limited application to severe psychopathology because sa humanistic is very focus siya sa potential. So, sa self-concept ng isang tao. So, limited lang yung application niya sa severe psychopathology. Humanistic therapy may be less effective, of course, for severe conditions like psychosis or acute trauma where structured intervention are needed. So, nilagay ko din yung mga intervention planning. Ano yung mga intervention planning sa under a humanistic approach na ina-emphasize nila. One is client autonomy and self-exploration, meaning making and personal values, a non-directive, empathetic, and supportive therapy stance, growth trajectories aligned with the client's self-concept and lived experience, especially relevant in educational and teacher well-being context. So, very qualitative jud siya, no? Because yung intervention planning din nila is if i-conduct is more on interviews, so less empirical, no? Hindi siya nakafocus sa mga surveys, ganun. So, in summary, humanistic psychology present a human-centered, growth-oriented, and experience framework emphasizing freedom, meaning self-actualization, and authentic living. It complements other paradigm, behavioral behavioral, cognitive, behavioral, and psychodynamics by prioritizing the therapeutic relationship and facilitating client growth rather than prescribing change. While its empirical limitation and cultural bias remains, it continues to shape counseling, education, and well-being practice, advocating for the inherent dignity and potential of every individual. So, that's it guys. Short recap lang po yun. I hope na na-recap sa atin and na-review kung ano man talaga ang humanistic psychology. So, thank you. Arigatou. Sawadee.
Good day, everyone. Today, I'll be presenting one of the emerging and very interesting trends in the field of psychology, which is the integrative or holistic therapy. So first, what do we mean by integrative or holistic? So this approach combines different dimensions of a person's well-being. So kasali dito ang mental, emotional, physical, social, and even spiritual. So instead of using only one method like the CBT or the cognitive behavioral therapy, integrative counseling blends several scientifically supported approaches such as mindfulness, psychodynamic therapy, solution-focused therapy, and sometimes even body-based or cultural healing practices. So, ibig sabihin, hindi lang isip ang tinutulungan, kundi buong pagkatao, like the katawan, damdamin, at spiritual well-being ng isang individual. So, for example, imagine a client who struggles with anxiety. So, instead of just doing the talk therapy, an integrative counselor might combine the CBT to challenge negative thinking, breathing or relaxation exercises for the body, journaling or meditation for spiritual grounding, and lifestyle changes like healthy diet or physical activity. So the goal is whole person healing. Yan ang goal ng integrative therapy. So to treat the root cause, not just the symptoms. But despite its promise, integrative therapy faces several issues like sa definition, research, training, ethics, system, and regulation. So let's discuss all of this one by one. So dito sa conceptual and methodological issues. So the first set of challenges is about concept and research. So how we define and study integrative therapy. So first is the definitional ambiguity. So there is still no single agreed upon definition of integrative or holistic therapy. So some define it as combining different evidence-based methods, while ang iba naman dinedescribe nila ito as addressing the person's mind, body, and spirit. Because of that, practices differ from one counselor to another kasi nga wala siyang definite na definition. So for instance, one therapist might combine CBT and mindfulness, while another naman might include yoga or even crystal healing. So both call it integrative, but they're doing very different things. So parang lutong bahay din yan siya. Like parehong adobo, pero iba-iba ang recipe or kung paano siya lutuin, depende sa nagluluto. So parang ganon. So this lack of clarity causes inconsistency and makes it hard to evaluate outcomes across different studies. So next dito is the weak empirical standardization. So many studies show that integrative therapy works, but the evidence base is still uneven. So most research has small sample sizes, short follow-up periods, and different techniques. So for example, some studies may test meditation plus CBT for stress, but only with 15 people for 2 weeks. So too short siya to prove long-term effectiveness. So this makes it difficult to say which component ba talaga yung nakakatulong doon. Is it the meditation, the talk therapy, or their combination? So next is the measurement problems. So another issue kasi dito is that most studies focus only on symptom reduction, like whether ang anxiety ba or depression score ay nag-improve ba or hindi. But holistic therapy aims for broader goals like inner peace, spiritual growth, better relationships, and lifestyle improvement. So when we only measure did you feel less sad, we miss the bigger picture of wellness. So sa madaling salita, hindi lang dapat sintomas ang sinusukat, kundi pati yung quality ng life ng isang individual. So next is the research design gaps. So many study, gumagamit sila ng quasi-experimental design. Like, meaning walang control group or walang fidelity check kung pare-pareho ba talaga ang delivery ng therapy. So, dahil dito, nililimit niya yung replicability. So, even if one study succeeds, we can't be sure others will get the same result. So, in short, kailangan pa ng mas malinaw na definition, mas maayos na research design, at mas matatag na ebidensya para sa integrative therapy. So, next is the professional competency and training gaps. So, the second set of issue, it deals with training talaga and professional competency. So, first here is the lack of formal training programs. So, most universities and counseling programs still don't offer structured training for integrative therapy. So, many practitioners learn from short workshops, online courses, or even self-study. So, while this shows initiative, it can also lead to incomplete understanding. So, kasi isipin natin for example, ang isang counselor, he or she might learn basic mindfulness from a YouTube tutorial, but may not know how to apply it safely for clients with trauma. So, without deeper training, there's a risk of misunderstanding or misuse of techniques. Kaya, kailangan talaga yung formal na mga training programs. Next is the inconsistent supervision standards. So supervision is supposed to help trainees grow ethically and effectively. But if the supervisor isn't trained in integrative methods, they might not provide accurate feedback. So eto siya, maaari siya na mag-lead into uneven quality of therapy among practitioners. So parang mga estudyante din yan kapag tinuturuan sila magmaneho ng guro na hindi naman marunong magmaneho. So pareho siya na delikado. Next is the competency verification and accreditation. So currently, there's no universal accreditation pa talaga that defines who qualifies as an integrative or holistic therapist. So in some countries, anyone can use the title even without specialized training. So maaari ito siya na mag-cause ng confusion for clients and reduce public trust in the field. So that is why experts are calling for standardized certification systems so clients know they're working with trained and ethical professionals. Next is the ethical and cultural considerations. So ethics and culture are also crucial in counseling, especially when blending different traditions and techniques. So first dito is the boundary and scope of practice issues. So when combining multiple methods, it is easy to cross boundaries unintentionally. For example, a counselor might try to include medical advice or religious rituals which are outside their area of expertise. So eto siya, pwede siya na mag-lead to ethical violations or client harm. So therapists must always practice within their competencies and get informed consent before using unfamiliar techniques. Kaya napaka-importante din talaga dito yung tinatawag na informed consent. Next is the cultural appropriation risk. So many holistic approaches draw inspiration from traditional or indigenous healing, like meditation from Buddhism or rituals from native or Filipino traditions. So if these are used without proper understanding or permission, it becomes cultural appropriation. So for example dito, gumamit ang isang counselor ng smudging rituals or indigenous chants just for relaxation without acknowledging their sacred cultural meaning. So eto siya, maaari na ma-disrespect niya yung culture na kung saan nanggaling yung ritual na yon. So kung kaya, kapag ang isang counselor ay gagamit ng mga ganito, dapat makipag-ugnayan siya at dapat mayroong respeto doon sa pinagmulan ng mga rituals na ito. Next is the transparency and client expectation. So some practitioners na advertise holistic therapy as a miracle cure, claiming it can heal everything from stress to chronic pain, even without evidence. So eto siya, maaari niyang ma-mislead ang mga clients and makapag-damage siya sa credibility ng profession. That is why ethical practice means being honest about what's supported by research and what's still exploratory. So next is the systematic and the structural challenges. So dito siya yung kung paano ba yung counseling system nakakasuporta or nakakalimit sa integrative therapy. So first here is the integration with medical system. So although integrative therapy works best when combined with medical and community care, the coordination between doctors, counselors, and alternative healer is often weak. So for example, mayroong isang cancer patient and then gusto niyang magkaroon ng psychological support and holistic healing like acupuncture or guided imagery. But hospitals or most hospitals often lack system to integrate these services. So this results in fragmented care instead of a truly collaborative approach. So next is the insurance and accessibility barriers. So another big problem is insurance coverage. So in most countries kasi, holistic or integrative therapy is not covered by health insurance. So making it expensive for clients and underpaid for therapists. So even if yung mga clients nag-believe sila na makakatulong ito sa kanila, they might not afford continuous session. So this creates inequality na kung saan only the wealthy can access it. So kung kaya, dapat sana maging abot kaya itong integrative therapy para sa lahat, hindi lang para sa mga may kaya sa buhay. Next is the equity and inclusivity. So minority groups and rural populations face more barriers in accessing integrative care. So for example, in rural areas, there may be no counselors who understand local languages or cultural beliefs. So a one-size-fits-all approach won't work. So holistic therapy must adapt to each community's context. So ibig sabihin dito dapat kung ano yung language or kung ano yung context na mayroon isang community, dapat nakasang-ayon doon kung ano ba yung therapy na dapat gamitin. Next is the workforce capacity. So implementing integrative therapy requires multidisciplinary teamwork involving mental health professionals, doctors, social workers, and even spiritual leaders. So however, many areas lack enough trained professionals and institutional support to make this possible. Kung kaya nalilimit nito ang reach and sustainability. So next is the technology and digital integration. So in the digital era, therapy is also evolving through technology. So first here is the telehealth adaptation. So during the pandemic, online therapy or telecounseling became a lifeline for many. It allowed clients to access help from home. However, it also raised issues such as data privacy, connection problems, and weaker emotional bonding kasi nga through online lang. That is why some clients feel awkward opening up online or lack digital literacy. So for example, yung mga elderly clients or those in remote areas may find video calls challenging. So while teletherapy increases accessibility, it also requires careful management of ethical and technical risks. So kahit nakakatulong siya, marami pa ring mga bagay na need talagang i-consider. So next is the engagement difficulties. So studies show that users of digital mental health apps often start strong but stop using them after a few weeks. So parang gym membership din siya, like excited sila sa umpisa, pero sa huli napapagod sila. So this means apps and platforms need better design, personalization, and follow-up to keep clients engaged. Next is the hybrid model. So a promising solution is the hybrid model, combining in-person and online sessions. So for example, clients might meet their therapists face-to-face once a month, then follow up through online check-ins. So this provides flexibility while maintaining human connection. So but again, it requires new ethical guidelines and updated training to balance technology with empathy. So next is the regulation, evaluation, and accountability. So first here is the licensing inconsistency. So legal recognition varies widely. So some countries regulate holistic practices, others don't. So this creates uncertainty for both practitioners and clients. So kung allowed ba siya or kung covered ba siya ng law, ganito na mga tanong. So uniform policies are needed talaga to define scope, standards, and legal boundaries for integrative counselor. Next is the need for fidelity system. So without clear manuals or standard methods, it is hard to ensure that all therapists deliver therapy consistently and effectively. So developing fidelity systems means creating guidelines or checklists to ensure quality across different settings. Next is the outcome tracking and evaluation. So measurement-based care is another important step. So this means counselor track client progress using tools and data, hindi lang intuition lang nila. So for example dito, gagamit sila ng mga regular well-being skills, client feedback, and progress notes. So sa pamamagitan nito, it ensures accountability and helps improve treatment precision over time. So next, so conclusion na tayo. So to summarize, integrative or holistic therapy is a promising and human-centered approach that acknowledges that people are not just their thoughts or emotions, but whole beings with mind, body, and spirit interconnected. So however, the field faces challenges. Kagaya ng na-discuss kanina, lack of clear definition and research evidence, limited training and supervision, ethical and cultural concerns, weak systematic support, technological barriers, and inconsistent regulation and evaluation. So, future steps should include developing formal training and certification system, expanding insurance coverage and accessibility, strengthening ethical and cultural awareness, improving research methods, and building collaboration between traditional, digital, and medical system. So, when guided by science, cultural respect, and compassion, the integrative or the holistic therapy can truly become a cornerstone of equitable, whole-person mental health care. So, at the end of the day, counseling, no, it is not just about treating the mind, but it is about healing the human being as a whole.
So ano nga ba ang multiple relationship? We are all familiar of it. Like in the word itself, multiple relationship, it is so understandable. But in defining multiple relationship, it is multiple or a dual relationship happens when a counselor has more than one of the connection with a client. So halimbawa, a counselor may also be a client's friend, co-worker, relative, or even business partners. So we have different types of multiple relationship. We have here the social, like being a both counselor and a family friend. We have here the professional, such as being someone's therapist and their supervisor at work at the same time. We have here in the community, when the counselor and the client belong to the same community, such as church or organization. So for instance, imagine a school counselor who is also the coach of the students' basketball team. Yung overlap na yon can affect how objective the counselor is during sessions. So in the next slide, we have here the ethical frameworks for boundaries. To guide professionals, we have ethical frameworks from the American Counseling Association or the ACA and the American Psychological Association, APA. So according to the ACA Code of Ethics 8.5, counselors should avoid dual relationship that could impair objectivity or cause harm to clients. Kung hindi talaga maiwasan, we must set clear boundaries and get the client's consent or informed consent and seek supervision. So the APA ethical principles emphasizes avoiding exploitation and maintaining confidentiality. For example, a counselor shouldn't use personal information from therapy to benefit themselves or others. So these rules exist para masiguro na ang counselor action are always in the best interest of clients. So, dapat yung wellness talaga ng client ang pinaprioritize ng lahat ng counselors. So, we have here the key ethical risk and concern. So, when a multiple relationship happen, several risks can occur. We have here the exploitation. So, baka hindi sinasadya, pero a counselor might take advantage of their position, like asking a client to buy something that they are selling. So next is the compromise objectivity. So emotions or personal connections can cloud judgment, leading to a biased advice. Next is the boundary confusion. So sometimes nalilito ang client kung ang counselor ba ay kaibigan or a professional helper. So lastly, we have the conflict of interest. So the counselor might have to choose between personal and professional priorities, which can harm the client's trust. So for you to understand it more, I will give an example based on this case study. It is the counselor as a friend. So let's look at the real life situation. So in a small rural community, a counselor provides therapy to a client whose family they are close with. So dahil nga magkaibigan sila, the counselor might hesitate to discuss sensitive topics or challenge the client's behavior honestly. So on the other hand, also, in the client's point of view, they might feel pressured to agree with the counselor's personal beliefs or value. So makikita natin dito no na how even well-intentioned relationship can blur professional boundaries and affect treatment's quality. So here's another example. So, a counselor in an agency is both the therapist and the supervisor of the junior staff member. So, dahil nga may power imbalance, the supervisee may hesitate to share personal issues or concern, fearing it could affect their job performance or evaluations. So, this type of dual relationship can limit honesty, trust, and emotional safety na parehong may importanteng role sa counseling. So in the next slide, we have here the solutions na pwede natin gawin. We have the mitigation strategies, the clear boundaries, and the supervision. So to manage these situations, counselor must establish clear boundaries and seek regular supervision. So bago pa magsimula ang mga sessions, dapat malinaw na kung ano ang professional at ano ang personal. So if there's a potential overlap, dapat pag-usapan agad. So supervision helps too. Through regular consultation, we gain perspective and avoid ethical mistakes. So halimbawa, if a counselor feels emotionally attached to a client, a supervisor can help them manage those feelings professionally. So in the next slide, we have here the ethical frameworks for boundaries. To guide professionals, we have ethical frameworks from the American Counseling Association or the ACA and the American Psychological Association, APA. So according to the ACA Code of Ethics 8.5, counselors should avoid dual relationship that could impair objectivity or cause harm to clients. Kung hindi talaga maiwasan, we must set clear boundaries and get the client's consent or informed consent and seek supervision. So the APA ethical principles emphasizes avoiding exploitation and maintaining confidentiality. For example, a counselor shouldn't use personal information from therapy to benefit themselves or others. So these rules exist para masiguro na ang counselor action are always in the best interest of clients. So dapat yung wellness talaga ng client ang pinaprioritize ng lahat ng counselors. So in addition, boundaries are like invisible lines that protect both the counselor and the client. Kailangan malinaw ang expectation. Ang example is not meeting clients in social gatherings or avoiding unnecessary contact outside the therapy ng kahit anong events man. So, regular supervisions ensures accountability. Dito natin na pag-uusapan ang mga dilemmas para masiguro na ang decision natin ay ethical and client-centered. So, another key strategy is informed consent and proper documentation. So, proper dapat yun. So, dapat alam ng client kung may possible dual role or boundary issue bago magsimula ang therapy. So, for example, kung pareho kayong nasa school or community group, kailangan transparent at may pahintulot ang client. So, documentation is equally important. Dapat i-record ang mga decisions, consultations at boundary setting discussions. Ito ay para sa transparency and accountability. Dapat din ito para sa parehong proteksyon ng client at counselor. To remain ethical, counselors need to grow continuously, both personally and professionally. So kasama dito ang self-reflection. We should ask ourselves questions like asking, am I staying objective or naapektuhan ba ako personally? So in ethics workshops, para updated sa bagong standards, we need this one. So awareness of culture and community, lalo na sa mga small towns na halos imposibleng hindi mo makakasalamuha ang clients outside therapy. Pero ang mahalaga, alam natin kung paano i-handle ang mga ganitong interactions with respect and professionalism. So, to conclude, multiple relationships are complex but manageable if counselors act ethically and staying self-aware. So, by setting boundaries, obtaining informed consent, seeking supervision, and engaging in continuous learning, we can protect our clients' welfare and uphold the integrity of our profession. So tandaan, ethical counseling isn't about avoiding every challenge, but about handling each one with honesty, respect, and professionalism. So thank you everyone for listening.